Elias Romero stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Bilbao penthouse, staring at the city lights below without really seeing them. 3 years ago, this view had meant something. Success, achievement, a life well built. Now it was just glass and distance. His reflection stared back at him. A man who looked successful on paper but felt hollow inside. Behind him, the penthouse stretched out in expensive silence. Marble floors, designer furniture, everything perfectly arranged and perfectly empty. The accident had taken his wife, Sophia, instantly. A drunk driver on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. But it had left his 8-year-old daughter, Lucia, trapped in a body that no longer obeyed her. Her spine damaged in ways the doctors explained with words like incomplete injury and uncertain prognosis. She could feel her legs, they said. That was something. But feeling and moving were two different things entirely. Elias had thrown money at the problem the way he threw money at everything else. The best specialists, state-of-the-art equipment, private therapists who came and went through their home like well-dressed strangers. But Lucia had stopped trying. She sat in her wheelchair by the window of her room, a small ghost of the laughing girl who used to dance through their lives. And she barely spoke anymore. The therapist said she was depressed. Elias didn't need their degrees to tell him that. He could see it in her eyes every morning. The same emptiness he felt in his own chest. His business partner Adrian had been circling lately, making suggestions about Elias stepping back, taking time to focus on family. The word sounded caring, but Elias knew better. Adrian wanted control of their investment firm, wanted to make decisions without Elias's veto power. There were board meetings Elias barely remembered attending, contracts he signed without reading. He knew he was slipping, but he couldn't find the energy to care. The doorbell rang, pulling him from his thoughts. He glanced at his watch. Right on time. The agency had sent over yet another house assistant. The fourth one in 6 months. The others had all quit. Too quiet, one had said. Too sad, another admitted. The last one had simply stopped showing up without explanation. Elias opened the door to find a woman in her early 30s standing there with a worn backpack and an easy smile that seemed out of place in his world of expensive misery. She had dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and warm brown eyes that looked directly at him without the pity he'd grown used to seeing. "Mr. Romero? I'm Maya Torres. The agency sent me." She extended her hand with confidence, not the nervous deference the others had shown. He shook it briefly. "The agency explained the situation?" "They did. You need help with household tasks and someone to be here for your daughter during the day while you work." Her voice was steady, matter-of-fact. No sugarcoating, no excessive sympathy. He appreciated that more than she could know. "My daughter doesn't really interact much with people," he said, leading her inside. "Don't take it personally. She's been through multiple therapists and assistants. She's just done trying, I think." Maya followed him to the pristine living room toward Lucia's bedroom. "Sometimes trying looks different than we expect," she said quietly. He wasn't sure what that meant, but he was too tired to ask. He knocked gently on Lucia's door before opening it. His daughter sat in her wheelchair by the window, exactly where she'd been that morning. She didn't turn around. "Lucia, this is Maya. She's going to be helping around the house." Elias kept his voice gentle, though he knew it didn't matter. Lucia barely acknowledged new people anymore. "Hi, Lucia," Maya said, walking into the room with that same easy confidence. She didn't crouch down to the wheelchair or use that high-pitched voice people sometimes use with kids. She just stood there, looking out the window beside her. "Nice view. I bet you can see the whole neighborhood from up here." Lucia said nothing. Elias felt the familiar weight of disappointment settling over him. This would be like all the others. But Maya didn't seem bothered. She glanced around the room, taking in the untouched toys, the books stacked neatly on shelves, the keyboard in the corner covered with thin layer of dust. "You play piano?" she asked. A tiny shrug from Lucia. Almost nothing, but more than she usually gave. "I'm not very good at it," Maya continued, moving toward the keyboard. "But I love music. My mom used to say that music was just feelings that didn't have words yet." She ran her fingers across the keys without pressing down, producing no sound. Maybe sometime you could show me how it works. No pressure, though. I'm just mentioning it. Elias showed Maya the rest of the penthouse, explained the basic routines, where everything was kept. She listened carefully, asked practical questions, and didn't once tell him how sorry she was for his loss or how strong he must be. When he finished, she just nodded and said she'd start with some light cleaning and making lunch. Over the next few days, Elias noticed Maya had a strange way of being present without being intrusive. She cleaned quietly, prepared simple meals, and spent time in the same room as Lucia without demanding interaction. Sometimes she'd hum while folding laundry. Sometimes she'd read aloud from a book, not to Lucia specifically, just reading as if she were alone. Sometimes she'd sit by the window and tell rambling stories about her day, about the funny things she saw on the metro, about a street dog that followed her for 3 blocks. Lucia never responded, but Elias noticed she'd turned her wheelchair slightly, angled now toward wherever Maya happened to be. 2 weeks in, Elias came home early from a meeting he'd cut short, too distracted to focus. He heard music coming from Lucia's room, the keyboard being played hesitantly. He stood in the hallway, listening. Maya's voice drifted out, patient and encouraging. "That's it. You don't have to press hard. Just enough to make the sound. There's no wrong notes when you're just playing around." "It sounds bad," Lucia's small voice replied. Elias's breath caught. It was the first full sentence he'd heard from her in weeks. "It sounds like someone learning," Maya said. "That's different than bad. Bad is when you don't try at all. You're trying, so it's brave." Elias walked away before they could hear him, his eyes burning. He went to his office and closed the door, pressing his palms against the desk. Something was shifting, some tiny crack in the wall of grief they'd been living behind. He was afraid to hope, afraid it would disappear if he acknowledged it too directly. But Maya kept showing up, kept existing in their space with that quiet, persistent warmth. She started bringing little things. A book of easy piano songs, a set of colorful resistance bands. She said she found on a market a board game with large pieces. She never pushed, never made a big deal of anything. She just left them available, possibilities waiting. Adrian stopped by the penthouse one evening unannounced, letting himself in with the key Elias had given him months ago for emergencies. Elias was in a video conference. So Adrian waited in the living room, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble. He could hear voices from Lucia's room, Maya and Lucia laughing about something. When Elias finished his call, Adrian was standing in his office doorway with an expression of concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. "The new assistant seems very friendly with Lucia," Adrian said carefully. "She's good with her. Lucia's responding well." Elias felt defensive without knowing exactly why. "I'm sure she means well." Adrian sat down without being invited. "But, Elias, you have to be careful. You don't really know this woman. And with Lucia being vulnerable, needing medical care, you should make sure everything is professional and appropriate. What are you suggesting?" "Just that you should keep an eye on things. For Lucia's safety." Adrian leaned forward. "Look, I can have my security guys set up some cameras. Just basic monitoring. Not because we don't trust Maya, but because it's good practice with any employee in your home, especially around a child." Elias hesitated. It felt like a violation somehow, but Adrian's words made a certain kind of sense. He was being careless, wasn't he? Letting a stranger into their lives without proper supervision. The old Elias, the one before the accident, would never have been so lax. "Fine," he said finally, "but discreet. I don't want Lucia feeling watched." Adrian smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. "Of course, just for everyone's protection." The cameras went up that weekend, while Maya was off. Small, nearly invisible things in corners. Elias felt sick about it, but told himself it was responsible. Adrian had the access codes, would monitor them, and would let Elias know if anything concerning happened. For 3 weeks, nothing did. Maya continued her gentle, persistent work with Lucia. The girl was talking more now, even attempting small movements, reaching for things, shifting her weight in the chair. The physical therapist who came twice a week remarked on the improvement with professional surprise. Then Adrian showed up at Elias's office downtown, his face grave, carrying a tablet. "We need to talk about Maya," Adrian said, closing the office door. "I've been reviewing the footage, and Elias, I think she's been lying to you." Elias's stomach dropped. "About what?" Adrian pulled up several video clips. They showed Maya working with Lucia, but not the casual interactions Elias had witnessed. These clips showed something else. Maya guiding Lucia through what looked like structured exercises, using the resistance bands in specific patterns, positioning Lucia's legs and feet with practiced precision, talking about muscle groups and neural pathways. "She's been doing therapy," Adrian said. "Real therapy, not just keeping her company. I did some research. Maya Torres was an occupational therapist, but her license lapsed 2 years ago. She's not certified anymore. What she's doing could be considered practicing without a license. If something goes wrong, if Lucia gets hurt, you could be liable. She could be prosecuted." Elias felt cold. "Why wouldn't she tell me?" "I don't know. Maybe she needed the job and thought you wouldn't hire her if you knew. Maybe she has good intentions but bad judgment. It doesn't matter. What matters is she's been lying and potentially putting Lucia at risk." Adrian's voice softened. "I know this is hard. I know Lucia has been happy. But you have to think about what's legal and safe." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He sat in his office with a tablet, watching the footage himself. Hour after hour of it. Maya working with Lucia, yes, but also Maya making her laugh. Maya celebrating tiny victories. A toe wiggle, a sustained grip, 3 notes played in a row on the keyboard. Maya staying late on her own time, not asking for extra pay. Maya bringing Lucia drawing supplies and helping her adapt her grip. Maya singing silly songs while guiding Lucia through stretches. And Lucia, Lucia, smiling, trying, living again in ways she hadn't in 3 years. He watched one clip over and over. Maya had asked Lucia to push against her hand with her foot. Lucia had tried and failed, her face screwing up in frustration. "I can't," Lucia had said, tears starting. "You can't yet," Maya had corrected gently. "Yet is different than never. Yet means we keep trying." "But what if it never gets better?" Maya had been quiet for a moment. Then she'd said, "What if it does? What if you miss it because you stopped trying right before the breakthrough? That would be the saddest thing, I think. Not the falling, but the stopping right before the getting back up." Elias wiped his eyes. He watched the timestamp. These sessions happened during Maya's regular hours, not hidden. She'd done them right there in the open. Just in the bedroom, Elias barely entered anymore, because it hurt too much to see his daughter trapped and hopeless. The next morning, he asked Maya to meet him in his office. She came with that same calm expression, though he thought he saw nervousness in the way she gripped her hands together. "I need to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay." Her voice was steady. "You were a therapist, occupational therapy. Why didn't you tell me?" She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than usual. "Because I knew you wouldn't hire me if I did. You'd see me as another therapist, and Lucia already rejected all the therapists. She needed a friend first. Someone who wasn't there to fix her or feel sorry for her. Someone who just saw her as a whole person. Your license expired." "I know. I let it lapse after." She paused, choosing words carefully. "I had a young patient, a boy named David, 7 years old. I worked with him for 2 years, and he made incredible progress. We were celebrating. His family was celebrating, and then he had a seizure during a session. Completely unrelated to anything we were doing, just bad luck and bad timing. But I was there when he died, and his parents blamed themselves, and I blamed myself, and I just couldn't anymore. I couldn't be responsible for that kind of hope when things can go so wrong so fast." Her eyes were wet, but she didn't look away. "But then I'd see kids like Lucia, trapped in their own sadness, and I could not help either. So I found ways to help without the license, without the official capacity. I know it's not right legally, but it felt more wrong to do nothing." Elias leaned back in his chair. Everything Adrian had said was technically true. She had no license. This could be legally complicated. There were risks, but everything he'd seen in those videos told a different story. "You've helped her more in 6 weeks than a year of licensed therapists did," he said quietly. She was ready. She just needed someone who didn't give up on her. "Did you give up on yourself?" The question hung there. Maya looked away, toward the window. Maybe I just needed someone who didn't give up on me either. Elias made a decision. Then that felt like the first real choice he'd made in years. "What would you need to get your license back?" Her eyes snapped to his. "What?" "To renew your certification. To practice legally. What would that take?" She looked stunned. "Continuing education credits. An exam. Proof of supervised practice hours. It's expensive and time-consuming. I've looked into it, but on an assistant's salary. I'll cover it. All of it. On one condition. You stay with Lucia through the process. Officially as her occupational therapist once you're certified. But until then, just as you've been. As her friend, who happens to know a lot about helping people heal. Mr. Romero. Elias. And I'm serious. You gave me my daughter back. Let me help you get yourself back." Maya's hand went to her mouth, and tears spilled over. She nodded, unable to speak. Adrian was furious when Elias told him. They stood in the conference room of their firm, voices raised for the first time in their 10-year partnership. "You're making a massive mistake," Adrian said. "You're thinking emotionally, not logically. This woman lied to you. She helped us. There's a difference." Elias kept his voice level but firm. "What about liability? What about the company's reputation? If this gets out, your judgment is clouded. Elias, you've been distracted for years, and now you're making reckless decisions." Adrian's face was red. "Maybe it's time we discuss a formal change in leadership structure. For your sake and Lucia's. You need to step back and focus on your family. Let me handle the business." And there it was, finally out in the open. Elias saw it clearly now. Adrian's concern had never been about Lucia's safety or Elias's well-being. It had been about control. "No," Elias said simply. "I'm not stepping back. If anything, I'm stepping forward again. And if you can't support that, maybe we need to discuss buying out your share of the partnership." Adrian stared at him, then grabbed his briefcase and walked out without another word. Over the next 6 months, things changed. Maya enrolled in her recertification program, studying at night while working with Lucia during the day. Elias converted one of the empty bedrooms into a proper therapy room, mats, equipment, mirrors, everything Maya said would help. He started coming home earlier, watching the sessions, learning what progress looked like in its smallest forms. Lucia started standing with support, then taking steps between parallel bars, then walking short distances with a walker. Every achievement was celebrated quietly, without pressure for more. Maya's philosophy was simple. Celebrate what is while working toward what could be. Don't let the hope for tomorrow steal the joy of today. One evening, Elias found Maya sitting in the therapy room alone after Lucia had gone to bed. She looked exhausted but peaceful. "Thank you," he said, sitting beside her on the mat. "For what?" "For not giving up. On her. On yourself. On us." Maya smiled. "You know what Lucia told me today? She said she wants to help other kids like her when she grows up. She said if someone could help her get braver, she could help them too." Elias felt his throat tighten. "She said brave?" "She said you have to be brave to try when you're scared of failing. And that scared is normal, but stopping is sad." Maya looked at him. "I think she's been watching you too. Seeing you try again with work, with life. Kids notice more than we think." An idea started forming then, something that felt like purpose. A week later, Elias sat down with Maya and Lucia and proposed it. What if they created something bigger? A program for kids with mobility challenges, using Maya's creative approach. They could call it the Brave Steps Initiative. Fund it through the firm's charitable foundation. Build a proper facility. Hire other therapists. Offer to families who couldn't afford private care. Lucia's eyes lit up. "Could I help? When I'm older?" "You can help now," Maya said. "Who better to tell other kids that scared is okay than someone who's been scared too?" It took a year to launch, but the Brave Steps Initiative became real. They found a space in downtown Bilbao, hired 3 additional therapists trained in Maya's methods, and offered sliding scale services. Maya became the program director once her license was official. Lucia, now walking independently for short distances and using forearm crutches for longer ones, visited the center every week. She'd talk to new kids, show them it was possible, share her favorite music therapy exercises. The penthouse, once a museum of grief, became something else. A home where laughter echoed again, where music played daily, where small victories were celebrated. Elias found himself smiling more, working with purpose instead of distraction. He cut ties with Adrian completely, restructured the business with partners who shared his values. One Sunday morning, Elias woke to piano music drifting through the penthouse. He walked to Lucia's room to find her at the keyboard. Maya sitting beside her, both of them playing a simple duet. Lucia hit a wrong note and laughed instead of stopping, then found her place again. "Morning, Dad," she said, without stopping playing. "Maya's teaching me the song she used to play for David, the boy she told me about. She said it's okay to play it now because remembering people isn't the same as being stuck in sadness." Maya glanced at Elias with wet eyes but a real smile. He understood then what healing actually looked like, not the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger. Not forgetting what was lost, but making space for what could still be found. "Sounds beautiful," he said, and meant it. That evening, standing at those same floor-to-ceiling windows, the view looked different to Elias. Not because the city had changed, but because he had. The lights below weren't just distant anymore. They were homes, lives, people trying, failing, and trying again, just like them. Behind him, Lucia practiced her walking with her crutches, Maya spotting her carefully. His daughter was humming that song, the one Maya had been too afraid to play for years. They were all a little broken still, a little scared, but they were trying together, one brave step at a time. And that, Elias had learned, was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.